kids out of the pool for Adult Swim.
Parody movies, a genre of movie that exists simply to make fun of other movies. You might think of classics like the Scary Movie franchise, or another Wayans Family classic, Don't Be a Menace to South Central or Drinking Your Juice in the Hood. Or maybe you think of less fondly remembered ones like Disaster Movie or Vampires Suck. Well, today I want to expand your parody movie palette and more so explore what the hell happened in the 2000s and why they don't really exist anymore. So let's talk about parody movies. But first, this video is sponsored by the lovely folks over at Adam and Eve, so take it away, me. Now this one is for my adults. You know Adam and Eve, you love them. They've been in business over 50 years. They're America's favorite adult store. They ship with discreet packaging, and 20% of their profit goes to fight the spread of HIV around the world. So head over to adamandeve.com and use code Mila for 50% off one item and free shipping in the US and Canada. Some exclusions apply. Since the dawn of film, those who can use the screen to share their stories and ideas with the masses in an artistic visual form. And those who can't, make parodies. I'm just kidding. Obviously, parody is a very valid genre, and some of what are considered to be the best comedy movies are parodies. According to Wikipedia, the first parody film is a 1900 30-second silent film titled Sherlock Holmes Baffled. It was also the first ever Sherlock Holmes movie. So the story that was being parodied wasn't another film, but rather the literary character that everyone knew and loved. But what we see the format we're more accustomed to is in the 1905 film Little Train Robbery, which was a parody of the silent western titled The Great Train Robbery, except it starred children in all the roles. And once again, unlike modern parody movies, The Little Train Robbery and The Great Train Robbery have the same director. The Great Train Robbery was a huge and successful movie, partially due to its unprecedented levels of violence and gore. So the director wanted to wring the sponge a little bit and just make another one, but with kids. In the 1910s, we get two more movies, another Sherlock Holmes parody where it's Sherlock Holmes but a hound, and a different style of parody that parodies tropes of a popular genre. This one pokes fun at the damsel in distress trope, and instead of a hunky savior, it stars famous dog actor Teddy the Wonder Dog. That's what's missing from society today. Famous dog actors. You can see the origins of the parody movie, but how did we get to the ensemble cast, photoshopped together poster, joke in every line movies that parody 30 movies at a time? Let's talk about some important names in parody. In the 40s and 50s, there were Abbott and Costello, who would put themselves into horror movies and, do their shtick, and lots of movies, very popular. Taking the torch from them in the 60s and early 70s was the Carry On franchise, which, by the way, has been around longer than the James Bond franchise. And they parodied everything. There was Carry On Spying, Carry On Cleo, Carry On Cowboy, Carry On Screaming, Carry On Up the Jungle, Carry On Henry, Carry On Dick. I could go on. Most of these were trope parodies. There were some historic parodies, but still, one topic at a time. In the 70s, sketch shows and films became super popular. Monty Python was a comedy troupe who became really well known for their sketches and vignette-style movies.
What are they in it for, these senile delinquents, these layabouts in lace?
Oh, the violence, the prestige, mainly.
As well as their parodies like Holy Grail, which is a parody of Arthurian movies, and Life of Brian, which is a parody of Jesus movies. And there were other sketch-type movies like The Groove Tube and Kentucky Fried Movie, which was written by the Zucker-Abrams-Zucker trio. We'll circle back to them. And this is also when SNL comes out. So as you can see, sketches were a super popular way to deliver comedy. Some jokes are only meant to be a few minutes long, and with a 40-minute TV show or a feature-length film, you can fit a bunch of jokes about a variety of topics into one thing. So let's talk about the Zucker-Abrams-Zucker trio. There are three filmmakers who grew up together and founded the Kentucky Fried Theater, hence the Kentucky Fried Movie. They're best known for the movie Airplane, which is largely known as the parody movie. It's a parody of the 50s drama 0 Hour, which is about a soldier who's traumatized because he made a mistake that cost lives in war while flying a plane, and he goes on a flight where a series of unfortunate events causes both pilots to be incapacitated, and so he has to conquer his fears and fly the plane. Because this movie was owned by Paramount, they were able to pretty much use the skeleton of 0 Hour and fill it with genre tropes and some specific film references to make Airplane. And this movie kind of popularized that really fast-paced, goofy, slapstick comedy with jokes that get called back over and over, and jokes and references to things in pop culture literally back to back to back. Nearly every line is a joke or the lead up to one. And it has a stacked cast of actors. Sound familiar? We'll keep remembering them because they'll come back again. Moving along, later in the 80s, comedian and filmmaker Keenen Ivory Wayans co-wrote and co-starred in the satirical film Hollywood Shuffle. And with the money from this film, he was able to make his directorial debut with the movie I'm Gonna Get You Sucker. This movie parodied blaxploitation films of the 70s, and these were a subset of exploitation films, which were when studios would say, let's make a movie about blank, just on the fact that whatever group of people would go and see it just because it was about blank. They relied heavily on stereotypes and were most popular in the 70s, so in this movie they parody all of those characters and those aesthetics from those movies, and it starred a bunch of actors who were well known from that genre. And when this movie comes out, parody movies are as popular as they had ever been, but this was just the beginning. Keenen Ivory Wayans is just the oldest of the Wayans siblings you probably know. There's also, of course, Damon Wayans, Kim Wayans, Marlon Wayans, Sean Wayans, and then there's other siblings and cousins and stuff. And they were responsible for shaping a lot of what comedy was in the 90s and the 2000s. Aside from their contributions to the parody genre, they're also responsible for In Living Color, The Wayans Brothers Show, obviously, My Wife and Kids, White Chicks, Little Man. Their work can literally not be overlooked. They were everywhere. But you know what we're here for. Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood is the blueprint for every single parody movie afterwards. This is a parody of Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, Juice, South Central, Do the Right Thing, Poetic Justice, New Jack City, and Friday. It had a stacked cast and a lot of cameos and some people referencing popular roles they'd had in the stuff being parodied. And kind of setting the tone for future parody movies, it was mostly disliked by critics, but loved by audiences. For 4 years, they continued their work on the Wayans brothers, waiting, training, storing their energy to bring us the parody movie franchise. And one of the best performing parody movies of all time, making $278 million in the box office, Scary Movie. And again, blueprint. If somehow you don't know the Scary Movie franchise, the first installment starred Anna Faris, Regina Hall, Marlon and Sean Wayans, Carmen Electra, and more. The movie primarily parodied Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer, which were both super popular slasher films of the prior 3 years. But they also parodied Halloween, The Shining, The Usual Suspects, Sixth Sense, The Blair Witch Project, and The Matrix. And I want to paint a picture of the writer's room for you, okay? We've got Sean Wayans, Marlon Wayans, and 2 writers from the Wayans Brothers show named Buddy Johnson and Phil Bowman. And that's it. And around the same time, the production studio Miramax was working on another Scream parody with filmmaking duo Jason Friedberg and Aaron Seltzer. So let's back up and get some lore for a second. These two have historically been shrouded in mystery. They are a bit more reclusive than other Hollywood figures, but they definitely exist. Aaron Seltzer is from Canada and Jason Friedberg is from Jersey. Jason's dad is a comedy director, screenwriter, and producer. Meet while attending UC Santa Barbara, neither of them for film, just a note, and develop a parody movie called Spy Hard. When Jason's dad's working with Leslie Nielsen on a comedy golf movie thing, he shows him his son's spy movie parody script. Leslie Nielsen, by the way, is a famous actor and comedian. You might recognize him from a few minutes ago when I was showing clips from Airplane. He liked it and he starred in the movie alongside Nicolette Sheridan. Older people will know her from Knots Landing, and everyone else might know her from Desperate Housewives. And this movie performed dreadfully. And not in the box office, it opened at number 3, actually. But it wasn't just with critics like with other parody movies. Like, the audiences didn't even like this movie. They just bought the tickets because they saw Leslie Nielsen and thought it would be funny. And the main complaint was that they tried their hand at that Zucker-Abrams-Zucker style comedy, but had none of the actual jokes or humor or payoff to back it up. So forward in time to the year 2000, Aaron Seltzer and Jason Friedberg have unsuccessfully sold, I think, 40 different screenplays, and they get an idea down the pipeline from the Wayans brothers' former management about a spoof titled Last Summer I Screamed Because Halloween Fell on Friday the 13th. And they get to writing a movie titled Scream If You Know What I Did Last Halloween. After they write that movie, the Writers Guild of America did some arbitrating and decided that Friedberg and Seltzer should get credits on what would become Scary Movie. Now, Jason and Aaron claim that there are jokes of theirs in the movie, like, I think there's like a fart joke or something that was like one of the first like big fart jokes on screen.
What's that noise?
Oops. I farted. I didn't think you would hear me.
No, that popping noise.
They claim to have written, and it's never been disputed, but the Wayans brothers still hold that those two were never on the set or even in the room for the creation of the film. And you'll see why this really matters in a moment. So, Scary Movie comes out, it's a hit, #1 in the box office. Until Fantastic Four came out, it was the most profitable movie ever made by a black director. Of course, a lot of people said it was too vulgar, and some even thought it should be rated something higher than R, but for a lot of people, that was half the magic. Next year, the Wayans family again works on Scary Movie 2, my personal favorite. This one parodies the general genre of haunted house / supernatural movies, including The Haunting, Stigmata, The Exorcist, Rocky Horror Picture Show, Amityville Horror, Poltergeist, Legend of Hell House, House on Haunted Hill, Bloodbath at House of Death, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, Hannibal, and Hollow Man. But this film would be the end of the road for the Wayans brothers in the Scary Movie franchise, and from this point it would be taken over by David Zucker. And the parody movie genre continued to grow strong. We get Not Another Teen Movie with a young Chris Evans. This parodies the entire genre of teen rom-coms, mostly taking the plot from She's All That, with the characters having really on-the-nose names like Janie Briggs, who is Lainey Bogg, and Jake Weiler, who is Zach Seiler. They do a lot of very specific film references, but overall it remains so cliche that outdated references don't feel that startling. And a lot of people consider this movie to be the last good parody movie. And in my opinion, it's got Wayans brothers' influence smeared all over it. The title alone is an example, and you'll actually see this specifically done a lot. So in the spirit of movies with names like a Wayans brothers movie, let's have a moment of silence for the following. Shriek if you know what I did last Friday the 13th. The 41-year-old virgin who knocked up Sarah Marshall and felt super bad about it. 30 nights of paranormal activity with the devil inside the girl with the dragon tattoo. You all tried. Anyway, we also get Wet Hot American Summer around this time, which parodies camp movies, and this is another movie that was critically panned, but gained a cult following. There's also Johnny English, which is a James Bond parody starring Mr. Bean, George of the Jungle, which parodies Tarzan and stars legend Brendan Fraser, Shaun of the Dead, Team America World Police, Soul Plane, but then they came back. Using the fact that they wrote on Scary Movie 1 alongside the beloved Wayans brothers to prop up their credibility, Jason Friedberg and Aaron Seltzer release a very uniquely titled date movie. And now I guess is as good of a time as ever to tell you that for this video, I watched all of the god-awful Aaron Seltzer and Jason Friedberg movies, so you don't have to. Content warning before we go, though, for every type of phobia and ism probably, specifically fat phobia, because they were really obsessed with fat people. So, first up, date movie. This one is a parody of movies in the romantic comedy genre, so kind of like Not Another Teen Movie, but with adults instead, and not funny. The main characters, Julia Jones and Grant Funk Your Joder, are played by Allison Hannigan and this guy. This movie parodies the larger plots of Bridget Jones' Diary, Meet the Parents, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and honestly it's pointless trying to pin down a specific movie because the way all of these movies are set up is that each scene is just a new parody using the same joke for 10 minutes straight. We open with a 5-minute long fat joke in the spirit of Just Friends. We then see our main character go meet her family who work at a Greek diner, like My Big Fat Greek Wedding. There she meets our male lead, some slapstick comedy. Oh yeah, part of the Greek wedding parody thing is that her family is Greek, Indian, Jewish, and Japanese, so her family expects her to find someone who is also of all of those same cultures, and her dad wants her to marry this guy. She goes to her love therapist, Hitch, from Hitch, played by Tony Cox, who is in a few of these movies. There's actually a lot of actors that you will see are Seltzerberg regulars. This is just another joke that goes on for way too long, and this is a common theme that you'll see happens in every single one of these movies. Then we cut to a Pimp My Ride parody montage where they make her skinny, another joke that just goes on. Then she goes off to The Bachelor where Chris Harrison is actually hosting. And it always catches me off guard when the actual person is in these movies because they usually have lookalikes, and sometimes I'm a bit face blind and I kind of think the lookalikes are the real person, so I never really know when it really is them. Anyway, The Bachelor is that guy, and he shoots all the other girls, leaving behind just the main character, and they go to dinner at a restaurant. I feel like when I say that these jokes go on for 4 minutes, it doesn't seem like that long, but it is. For reference, if you go look up clips from Don't Be a Menace, you will rarely find clips at or over 3 minutes. 3. And Not Another Teen Movie is the same way. Most of the clips are in the 2-minute ballpark because once a joke is over, it's over. This entire movie is like watching one of those SNL skits where they just take the joke too far and it goes on for too long, except it was never funny to begin with. My very first almost laugh watching this movie came 45 minutes in during a What Women Want parody where there's a parody of Britney and Kevin Federline.
He's a freaking backup dancer.
Dude, I married Britney Spears. I'm rich.
And even this joke, probably the least stretched out joke in the entire movie, still went on for just a bit too long, and I can't stand it. The clip I just showed you was edited. This is how it actually looked in the movie.
What the hell was I thinking? He's a freaking backup dancer.
Dude, I married Britney Spears. I'm rich. I'm rich, biatch. Rich.
Do you see what I'm saying? Even in the smallest of jokes, there's just no comedic timing at all. And immediately after that one peaceful moment, we're back to jokes that go on for way too long. The next scene is a My Best Friend's Wedding parody.
The moment I saw you, before I proposed to you.
I know I have some young viewers, so this scene in the movie is basically Julia Roberts' character brings her gay friend to a wedding dinner because she's trying to make the groom, her childhood friend, jealous, and he embarrasses her by serenading her with this song, and he makes a huge scene in the restaurant, and she's mortified. It's actually quite a cute and funny scene. I love this movie. If only I could be watching that movie instead. But this scene isn't funny. I worry that a lot of the rest of this video will just be me watching unfunny stuff and saying it isn't funny, and I don't want that. I want to recap these movies for you, but they're also just not made with a plot in mind. And I noticed that a lot of these jokes, like a big movie that they parody in this movie, like I said, was Meet the Parents and Meet the Fockers, which are comedy movies. So, like, they parody the part where it's like, I've got nipples, can you milk me? And, you know, that was already a joke in the movie. You know? Anyway, in this movie, the guy's childhood best friend is this girl, and they're very obviously into each other. She ends up seducing him on the day of the wedding, and Julia sees them. He tries to win her back. There's a classic Say Anything parody, boombox over the head, and then she finds an article he wrote where he reveals that it was all a ploy. Ta-da! It was all a How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days parody. Next up is Epic Movie. This movie was marginally less terrible than the last one. Kinda. Not because it's funnier, but because they tried to cram even more jokes into it, and so I feel like they were kind of forced to move on from the jokes sometimes, but that's still the movie's fatal flaw. This movie's mostly a parody of the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which came out a year before and was a box office hit. I'm talking over $700 million. And the stars of this movie are Jayma Jays, aka Emma Pillsbury from Glee, Cal Penn of Harold and Kumar fame, the beautiful Fawn Chambers, who you'll probably recognize from Bring It On 2 or White Chicks, and this guy again. His name's Adam Campbell, but that's a very John Appleseed name. We open with a Da Vinci Code parody with this guy who is definitely Kevin Hart. But tell me why when I Google the cast of Epic Movie, it says the role of Silas the Monk is played by David Watley Zepeda. This is Kevin Hart. You're going to look at me in my eyes and tell me that's not Kevin Hart? Anyway, Emma from Glee becomes orphaned when her guardian is slain by David Watley Zepeda, who is a parody of Silas from the Da Vinci Code. And already we're seeing the greatest Seltzerberg flaw, jokes that are way too long. And the next scene is a Nacho Libre parody that does the same thing. And then there's a Snakes on a Plane parody. Same thing. But luckily, she gets ejected from the plane and she lands on this Paris Hilton character. And this is the one and only time that you'll see this character in the movie, but they put her on every poster and every cover for this movie. Like, they wanted a big ensemble film so bad. They wanted to be Not Another Teen Movie so bad. I will admit though, my first laugh in this movie came earlier than in the last movie, though it was still quite a ways in for a comedy movie. John Appleseed is at his X-Men parody Mutant High School, and Carmen Electra is there. Get used to her, she's a recurring actor. But in this scene, Lauren Conrad is just also there at the Mutant High School, and that made me you know, blow air out of my nose fast. There's also this plot line where they're all finding golden tickets. I should mention that because the next scene is a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory parody. And this is seemingly a beloved scene from this movie. Willy Wonka and the Oompa Loompas are dancing to Fergalicious, and they start maiming all of the main characters. So Willy's holding them hostage in his house, and they're scared. Then a big bunch of nothing funny happens, and finally, 20 minutes into the movie, it begins. Miss Pillsbury gets into Narnia and she meets Mr. Tumnus. She goes to his house. There's a very long MTV Cribs parody. He tells her she needs to leave because the queen, the white witch, the white bitch, is going to get her because she's human, I guess. But plot twist, she goes to leave and finds that everyone has followed her in. Edward actually meets the queen. Listen, I'd call her by the character's name, but I just can't risk it. And she's played by the incomparable Jennifer Coolidge. And from around here, like 25 minutes into the 40-minute mark, I was really hating myself for choosing to do this video. It's just so nothing. Literally the only thing that happens in that entire time period is Mr. Tumnus gets arrested for harboring a human, and they meet Harry Beaver, voiced by Tony Cox. So they find out from the Beaver that they're a part of some prophecy, and they're actually all related. Quadruplets, in fact. And the queen took out their parents to stop the prophecy. Edward runs to go be with the queen because he's obsessed, and she tricks him into giving his siblings location to see her boobs. And there's a punk joke, and he's captured. Do I need to say it at this point? So she sends the monk, David Watley, to go get them. Meanwhile, Mr. Tumnus is sending them off to go train at where else but Hogwarts. They train with Harry and Hermione, who are all old, and Hermione's pregnant and Ron's a pervert. And the queen finds out they escaped David Watley when she checks her MySpace. Very topical. Also, her top 8 are Saddam Hussein, Denise Richards, Rosie O'Donnell, Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen, Paris Hilton, Oprah, Ashley Simpson, and Kevin Federline. And she's a Fall Out Boy fan. Edward ends up breaking out of the jail thing with Captain Jack Swallows. And then there's a musical number that's a parody of an SNL digital short by Andy Samberg. And it's about watching Narnia and buying Magnolia cupcakes, so I'm assuming that's why they used it, was because of the Narnia thing. But either way, topical. This is another part of the movie that people say is the best. Nostalgia is one hell of a drug. Then there's a Borat parody, which is just parodying something that was already a parody, so it doesn't really hit because Borat is just funnier. I don't want to sit here and just be like, it's not funny because it's a parody, but it just reminds me of whenever Gangnam Style was really huge and every late night talk show parodied it, and it was just, it's like repeating someone's joke, you know? Okay, I'm gonna try to speed run through the last 40 minutes of this movie. Everyone tells them they have to go meet Aslo, which is a parody of Aslan, the lion in Narnia, who is a allegory for God. They go meet him. He's half lion, half man, played by Fred Willard, who you probably recognize from a number of things. He has a vast catalog of work. This is probably not his best display of talent. He sleeps with all 3 of them, and then he goes to rescue the other brother and fights David Watley, and Edward gets out, but the queen comes and takes him out, unfortunately. They get ready for war, and they've got pretty much everyone on their side, including the X-Men from John Appleseed's high school at the beginning. So before they go to war, they party. They get drunk. There's a way too long vomit joke. Liquid on the face jokes are very popular with Aaron Seltzer and Jason Friedberg. You'll come to see that. The blonde guy sleeps with Carmen Electra. There's another unfunny fat joke. And then the day of the battle, since Susan threw up on everyone, they aren't on their side anymore. And when the war starts, they all instantly get. But then Jack comes in on the big wheel thing from the Pirates movie. But he gets turned around, and the queen almost gets Peter, but he finds the remote from Click. And then we just get, you know, repeated jokes that already happened in Click. He heals his siblings, and they get up and get everyone while time is paused. And there's a time jump. They all rule Narnia until they're old and gray. Then they find the wardrobe again. They come out, they're still young. But they get run over by Jack on the wheel thing. The end. Now, while Date Movie may have been critically panned because everyone kind of got fooled into seeing it because they said 2 of the 6 writers from Scary Movie, but Epic Movie was truly hated. And even though a lot of people do have a special place for it in their hearts, it's widely considered to be one of the worst movies ever. And it's actually not the only one of Aaron Seltzer and Jason Friedberg's movie that will be given that honor. So like I said before, Date Movie and Epic Movie were both really successful in the box office. They both made around $85 million on $20 million budgets, and even though they were reviewed poorly, they were making the money. So for Meet the Spartans, they got an even bigger budget of $30 million. And this movie parodies the very controversial 300, directed by Zack Snyder, a historic, very CGI live action of a graphic novel that depicts the events of the Persian Wars. You may know it for this line.
This is Sparta!
This movie was pushed hard on MySpace. There were ads everywhere, and the film studio even sponsored an upgrade to MySpace where you could store 300 pictures on your account, thanks to the movie 300. And before that, you could only store 12. So it was this very relevant movie. It made over $450 million in the box office, but more importantly, dumb movie bad. And that brings us to Meet the Spartans. This one, I don't think it'll really matter if you haven't seen 300. It's fairly simple to understand what's going on. And again, the idea of it's nothing new. Take the plot of one movie, interject a bunch of other parodies into it, ta-da. And this movie got the first laugh out of me way faster than the other ones. The baby with abs and a beard did make me laugh, unfortunately. But then I was quickly reminded of just whose movies I was watching, because then there was a painfully long testicle joke. Then our female lead arrives, Miss Carmen Electra. Remember, I told you she was going to be a recurring actor in these? She's a Leonidas fangirl, and she says she wants to have his baby. He's down, and I suppose some context is needed to make sense of some of this stuff. Zack Snyder also took the artistic liberty of depicting his villains as gay, saying, quote, "What's more scary to a 20-year-old boy than a giant god king who wants to have his way with you?" Which is... and also 20-year-old boy. The jokes just write themselves. Anyway, in Meet the Spartans, it is canon that all of the men in Sparta are gay, or at least bi. They all greet each other with mouth kisses, and they explicitly liken it to prominent LGBT communities like San Francisco and West Hollywood. So the plot comes in, a messenger says King Xerxes wants them to build pyramids for him, or else they'll all be indebted to him and he'll take everything. Leonidas kills the messenger, as in 300, and here we're introduced to the pit. Then we get this 5-minute long scene where just different pop culture references keep spawning at the hole and Leonidas kicks them in. There's this tasteless Britney Spears parody, and of course following it a Kevin Federline parody, and then we get American Idol, and then Ryan Seacrest. And they go talk to the ancient prophets, and this is the type of shit I'm talking about when I say the gags in this movie are gross. Like, this is physically repulsive to me. And it just goes on for way too long. But they tell him he can't go to war with Persia. Then there's a guy named Traitoris or something, and he's betraying them, and he's gonna snitch on them to the Persians and tell them where Leonidas and them are. They sing "I Will Survive" as they ride into battle and eventually stumble upon the Persians. And this is a favorite scene for many people. Since 300 didn't have gory fight scenes, they were just highly choreographed and stylized, they parodied that with a dance battle and other things in this movie. Oh, there's also this Paris Hilton parody. She's grown a hunchback from the stress of jail. Also, this is Nicole Parker, who you'll see again, but in this film alone, she plays Paula Abdul, Britney Spears, Ellen, and Paris Hilton. They finally fight Xerxes 40 minutes into the film, and at this point, I was so tired of this movie. And you know, I liked this movie as a kid, and I don't even know why. I had never seen 300. I mean, I knew the things being parodied within it for the most part, but I don't know what the reason was that I liked this movie. And that made me wonder, how many other people that liked these movies were just middle schoolers? And then I got snapped back into the movie because they made the second funny joke ever.
It will be as though you never existed. I will see to it that you are written out of the history books. Well, that's fine by me, Xerxes. Because I can't read.
And then this second battle is a Yo Mama battle, and Tiffany Haddish is there. And then a bunch of nothing and gross liquid jokes happens. The traitor guy and Gorgo hook up. Then the next day when she tries to rally the troops, he's acting all different, and she turns into Venom and gets him good. I laughed at this too, unfortunately.
And the army is quite impressive, as you can imagine.
Now it's time for the final battle between the Spartans and the Persians. There are parodies of
Ghost Rider,
Rocky, Grand Theft Auto, and Transformers. And pretty much everyone dies, and the movie ends with a Lindsay Lohan upskirt. The second upskirt joke of this movie. The end. It was around this point that it really struck me that nostalgia is most of what people love about these movies today, right? Like, Superhero movie came out right after this movie. And that's not an Aaron Seltzer and Jason Friedberg movie, but it's another parody movie that was associated with these movies because they were just everywhere. And you know, the blank movie format title. These movies were constantly being pumped out, and people were watching them. This next movie is one that I remember watching, and I think enjoying. I remembered some of the big gags and the words to the songs, but I was also 9 when it came out, so I didn't get a lot of the humor, and most of it is just bad. And I feel like at this point, around when Meet the Spartans came out, this was as good as it was ever gonna get for these two. Their peak, if you will. Critics always hated them, but around this time, they were kind of making movies for the people. I think they, and maybe some of their fans, thought that they were in a similar situation as the Wayans brothers. Because remember, at this point, they're still known as 2 of the 6 writers of Scary Movie, which was a generous descriptor. But then one movie would change all of that. Disaster movie. At the time of its release, this movie was their biggest flop to date. They projected that it would make $17 million in the opening weekend. It made 6. In the end, it made $34.8 million on a $20 million budget. But you know, it covers the debts, but it's much worse than all of their other movies. And if you like Letterboxd reviews, this is the lowest rated of all the Jason Friedberg and Aaron Seltzer movies, with 1 singular star. This movie feels very indicative of humor at the time, specifically on the internet. Think Ryan Higa, Smosh, Lonely Island, SNL digital shorts. Parody was everywhere, but this specific brand of goofy, acceptable on a low budget parody is something that they really loved, especially in this movie. We open with a parody of American Gladiator where we're introduced to this crystal skull thing from Indiana Jones. This will be important later. There's also an Amy Winehouse parody where they make her a saber-toothed tiger. Nice. And a really long burp joke that's even longer in the unrated version. Oh yeah, and they say the world will end on August 28th, 2008. But this was all just a dream in the mind of our main character, Will. This movie follows the general plot of the movie Cloverfield, but you know the drill. And I might venture to say that this is the most egregious attempt at what they usually do. It's almost like they heard criticisms of their jokes being one thing for way too long, so they were like, oh, I get it, you want us to put more references in. So we meet Will and his girlfriend Amy, played by Vanessa Minnillo, or Vanessa Lachey now, and this Flava Flav parody that for some reason always stuck with me. Will has commitment issues and he isn't able to return the favor when Amy says she loves him, so she dumps him on the night of his Sweet 16. He's 25, but he never had one, so he's having one now. So tonight, the night of Thursday, August 28th, 2008, Will is having a Sweet 16, and everyone is invited. Dr. Phil, Angelina Jolie from the 2008 action thriller Wanted, Kim Kardashian, who plays one of our other female leads, Lisa, who's the main character's best friend Kelvin's girlfriend. There's also 2 of the 3 main characters from Superbad, Javier Bardem, played by Ike Barinholtz of Mad TV fame, and he's like the male counterpart to Nicole Parker in this movie in that he plays every character. So Lisa and Carmen Electra's character fight over Kelvin in a WWE Divas parody. We're like 20 minutes into the film and there's still so many more parodies just in this one scene. Juno and Bleecker from Juno show up and they do a parody of the little song that they sing. And then my absolute favorite part as a kid, this High School Musical parody. It starts with a We're All in This Together parody called We'll All Be Friends Forever. Everyone gets a verse, the Jonas Brothers are there. Then it turns into a Crank That parody. Then
JT's here! JT!
And then
It's Jessica Simpson!
So as the song's wrapping up, natural disaster strikes. Pinkberry's destroyed, everyone's panicking, and outside, more of the thing is happening. Hannah Montana gets crushed by a meteor, then Hancock shows up and he's drunk. Then the Sex and the City ladies show up and they fight Juno. Juno wins. There's like the 4th liquid in the face joke of this movie so far. It's truly repulsive. And then I'm guessing their Kim Kardashian budget ran out because they had to... And she's crushed by a meteor in a scene that Kim says embarrasses her so much that she can't watch. When they get outside, Nicole Parker is waiting yet again, this time as Elle from Enchanted, who is how do I say this? She works in the world's oldest profession, and her prince, her boss, comes after her, and he actually looks like James Marsden. Like, for a second, I thought it was really him. This is what I'm talking about. They always trip me out. And this also tells me that I more than likely thought that this was James Marsden when I watched it as a kid. So they have a You Got Served style dance battle here over her, but she dances in it. But that was probably just to get this gag in with the obvious stunt double. They do it in every one of their movies. I just don't ever point it out because it's not that funny. And here's the thing again. Iron Man shows up and gets crushed by a cow. Hellboy shows up, gets crushed by a cow. The Hulk shows up, gets crushed by a cow. But thankfully more plot starts to happen. As in Cloverfield, Will's girlfriend is stuck and can't evacuate. Amy works at the Smithsonian and she's pinned down under the sword of a statue. More facial contamination jokes. Then there's an Alvin and the Chipmunks bit. They have rabies and it gets very vulgar and unclassy. Oh yeah, and they get Juno. Then they do a head-on commercial bit. I don't know how well this joke has or will age, which is something about all of these movies that's of concern. And I don't think they were made to last. They were just made to be topical because some of these movies that they parody weren't even out yet. They just watched the trailers and parodied the idea of it. And like the Angelina Jolie bit, that was in the trailer. I think one of the most important things about movies everyone loves, like Airplane or even Scary Movie, is that they parody things very generally and the plot is able to stand on its own in a way that even if you don't know the movies, you'll still laugh because the jokes in the bits are funny. But in these movies, most of the time the joke just is the bit. Like, what you're laughing at is just going, oh, I know that. And the second half of this movie is really just a speed run of how many parodies they can fit into a movie. There's Batman, Herbie, Kung Fu Panda, Michael Jackson. But what happens is Will gets into the museum, he frees Amy, since it's the Smithsonian's obviously a Night at the Museum parody. Beowulf comes to life and he's naked, and this is another scene that for some reason really stuck with me as a kid. Then there's some slurs. Tony Cox makes an appearance as Will's dad. They put the crystal skull back where it needs to be. Will and Amy get married, and then they sing this song.
I'm f***ing Matt Damon.
Well, I'm Hannah Montana. She's
And this is how I know these jokes weren't made to last, because this is a parody of a song made by comedian Sarah Silverman as a bit on the Jimmy Kimmel Show.
I'm Matt Damon.
She's Matt Damon.
And now, because I really want to talk about something else for a second, the backstory to that is that back in the beginning days of Jimmy Kimmel Live, he had a bit that he would do at the end of every episode where he would pretend that Matt Damon was there, but they ran out of time for him.
Matt Damon, apologies, we ran out of time. Apologies to Matt Damon, we ran out of time. Apologies to Matt Damon, we ran out of time. Matt Damon, I'm sorry we ran out of time.
And it was kind of a long-running one-way joke that Jimmy Kimmel had, which I just love. I don't know. I love a running gag. So in 2008, his then-girlfriend, aforementioned comedian Sarah Silverman, made a video where she and Matt Damon sang that they were boinking. And that's what they parodied here. Okay, back to the movie. Remember how I said this was their biggest flop? According to Wikipedia, it was featured in Empire's 50 Worst Movies Ever poll in 14th place. In 2012, it was included in Total Film's 66 Worst Movies Ever list. The MRQEs included it in its 40 Worst Movies list, where it had a score of 19, one of the lowest scores on the site. And it became the lowest ranked film on IMDb's bottom 100 list days after its premiere. And it was nominated for 6 Golden Raspberries. It was really bad for them. And after this movie was released in the timeline of parody movies, the Wayans brothers released a movie called Dance Flick that was a parody of Save the Last Dance. I wish I was watching that movie. The Seltzerberg's next venture was the hot, very topical, lowest possible hanging fruit, Twilight. Those who thought they could never make a comeback had simply never considered the sheer level of hatred and vitriol adults had for this teen romance fantasy film. And I don't know, I don't really feel like I have to give a rundown of this movie. It's literally just Twilight with like a supercut of every joke that was ever made about Twilight on YouTube, on SNL, on late night shows, by me and my friends in my Facebook skits that I would direct. You've heard every single joke in this movie already. Except maybe this Black Eyed Peas joke, which people seem to love. Like, multiple people mentioned this joke to me when I said I was watching this movie.
You know who we are, don't you? You're the Black Eyed Peas.
Why does everyone always think we're the Black Eyed Peas?
But mostly, it's just a bunch of non-jokes. Like the Black Eyed Peas joke. That's it. That's the whole joke. Just that they look like the Black Eyed Peas. And then there's this part where Bella's going to dinner at Edward's house. You know the scene. And she says, "This is like that time I went to my boyfriend's house for Kwanzaa." And that's the entire joke. That's it. This whole movie, and arguably all of their movies, are just the setup for jokes. And that's it. But the biggest crime in this movie, and yet another testament to this duo's inability to pinpoint just what parts of pop culture or a movie or whatever will remain relevant, is that there's no baseball scene. Possibly the campiest and most ridiculous part of this entire franchise, and they just completely ignore it. Stop! But in the words of Nick DeRamio, this movie's just a big nothing burger. Not even Ken Jeong could save it. However, people seem to love this movie. I did a poll on my Twitter asking which was the least terrible movie of theirs, and Vampires Suck won. I was absolutely floored. And if you go on Google, the first handful of reviews are all positive. Vampires Suck is a masterpiece. The pure comedic chaos brilliantly showcases the many flaws in the original Twilight series. However, where the original series took itself seriously, leading to its notoriety as a bad film, Vampires Suck is based entirely in randomness and satire, making it a genius vessel for performing its ultimate purpose, to entertain and evoke laughter based on the many shortcomings of the original trilogy. I've loved this movie since I was a kid, right after my Twilight phase. People commenting this ruins Twilight are taking this movie way too deep. It's meant to be a spoof parody comedy that's funny, and it truly is. The overdramatic reactions of the scenes are hysterical and honestly are really accurate at times. Even though I don't like the Twilight movies and books, I still liked this movie. Some say it's a ripoff, but just like Epic Movie, which contains Chronicles of Narnia, Harry Potter, etc., this is also a very funny one, especially where Becca says, "Hey, you're in my narration." I'm a real fan of the Twilight books, and I simply loved this movie. It was a very funny way to illustrate all of the cliches from the overall saga. Even the small details are super funny. The way Becca touches her hair, the way Jacob scratches his head like a puppy, the freaking size of Becca's cactus. Obviously, if you're looking for a serious movie, this is not the one. But you're just looking for something silly to spend the time? Why not? Watch it, feel awkward, and have fun. Simple as that. I just can't believe that me and these people watched the same movie. The next movie is, in my opinion, the worst of them all. It is The Starving Games. This is a parody of The Hunger Games, clearly, starring Mayada Walsh, aka Mina from Cory in the House, or Mandy from Mean Girls 2. And you know, she and all the actors in these movies really are doing the best with what they're given. I was just so utterly bored watching this movie. The first gross mouth liquid joke is literally a minute in, and then it's just usual fare with a carousel of topical parodies that age like milk. Harry Potter, LMFAO, The Annoying Orange, the Double Rainbow video, Skittles commercials, T-bowing. There's a parody of the song Taylor Swift wrote with the Civil Wars for the Hunger Games soundtrack, The Hunger Games songs from District 12 and beyond. Yeah, this movie was really boring, and explaining it would be pointless because nothing happens. And maybe me, at this point in the video, 6 or so movies deep, maybe I'm a representation of society at this point in the parody movie timeline. I've just seen it all. Like, I get it. The last movie is Superfast, a parody of The Fast and the Furious, which came out in 2001. This movie came out in 2015. Just food for thought. Same plot as the original. Main character Lucas is an undercover cop sneaking into Vin Sorrento's street racing thing to spy on him. But it was just ultimately very boring and really bad and really terrible. It feels like Aaron Seltzer and Jason Friedberg themselves lost interest in these movies at this point. And I'm trying to recall anything that happened, and I just can't. So I'm taking that as a sign from my brain to stop. I've had the idea to do this video for a while, and recently I saw a lot of people posting parody movie clips onto TikTok, and the comments would mostly be, "What happened to parody movies? Oh my god, these movies were so good, but so bad." And a lot of people, I think, would say, well, they happened. And in a way, yes, they completely took over the genre and beat it mercilessly within an inch of its life. But I don't think people don't like parodies anymore. Mike Epps did a movie called Meet the Blacks from around this time that was one of Hulu's most watched movies
of 2021.
Popstar Never Stop Never Stopping, a parody of the Justin Bieber movie Never Say Never, is a great movie. And that Eurovision movie that came out in 2020 has pretty good ratings and got nominated for quite a few awards, so I don't know. I don't think I would say that people don't like parodies. I think humor just changes, which, you know, we shouldn't still have to keep saying. And while people may not be listening to Smosh parodies today, there have been so many viral TikTok sounds that are categorically parodies.
I'm gay, but I'm straight.
So fear not, they didn't really end the genre, they just made a lot of really, really bad movies. And that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane. I have more stuff coming, like I always say, I was actually working on a different video, but it was taking a really long time and some stuff happened, so I took a break on that video and made this one. So I promise I'm working on stuff. I literally swear. But again, I'm also a student. I'm in my last year of college. I'm trying to graduate in December. I have 2 internships, so please take it easy on me. As always, like and subscribe if you liked this video. Please do it, please. And I also want to say thank you so much for all the love on my after video and my Britney video, of course. But the after video was really a slow burner. I believed in that video, and I'm glad you guys like it too. I'm gonna be doing an after part 2 soon. I'm in the process of reading the second book, which is a hell of its own. And don't forget to check out today's sponsor, Adam and Eve. I love you all. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.